You know, what's interesting about war is that there's lots of generalizations made up about it. But in going to these extremities, what's interesting is that you see that even in these terrible times, in these terrible moments, in these terrible extremities, that people are still human. I think that for me is like the redeeming factor of the human experience. No, that sounds too fucking bullshit.
Well, I think it was good. I think you're almost there.
You know, there's a lot of people who make kind of generic, no, I don't want to say there's a lot of people, you know. I think the important thing for me is to make work that is connected to people, you know. I like to, oh shit, sorry man. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I kind of got it, I just kind of, I think the important thing for me is to connect with real people, you know, to document them in these extreme circumstances, you know, where there aren't any kind of neat solutions or where you can't put any kind of neat guidelines and say this is what it's about or this is what it's about. It's not. I hope that my work kind of shows that.
Yeah, that was strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which way is the front line from here? Yeah. Is it that way?
Jesus, you know, like it's kind of stayed out. Fuck, look at that. Nice little shoot.
If you get shot at, just jump on it.
Good.
Crazy.
Yes, it's crazy.
I risked my life for a lot of different things. As a documentary photographer, I probe this idea the whole time of what am I doing and why am I doing it. You know, a single photo isn't necessarily a story, so you have to ask yourself the question why you put yourself in that position, and I do it for lots of different reasons. I do it also for personal reasons, as much as I do it for the objective truth.
In war, you see so many crazy things happening. You see all sorts of different human emotions crystallized. Reporting on these things that are very complex and political, it gives you an insight into human behavior that imbues your reporting with a sense of meaning and significance. It's addictive in that way, yeah.
As a photographer, you need to develop a way of working that suits your personality, but also allows you to bring out the sort of subject matter that you think is important.
At the root of my work is really this kind of whole idea of intimacy. I become deeply embedded emotionally in all the work I do. Wow, she's a really bright character, huh? How old are you?
9 years old.
9 years old. What's her favourite time at school?
Family.
You seem very intelligent for 9, huh? Just keep looking here and don't move. It's necessary, I think, in raising sort of consciousness of serious political or social events to create something that works on a more imaginative level. Something that will allow the viewer to engage creatively with the subject. Can you see me? Hello, Prasad. Okay, we're going to swap now, and you're going to come and sit here.
For me, it's all about personalisation. You know, often we see scenes of disaster and it's almost like we forget that the people imaged are individuals with individual stories and lives.
Yeah? You don't? Okay, no problem. Ask him, was that painful?
Yeah.
It was painful. Yeah, that's the sad truth about photography.
I got into photography because I got into travel. I lived in 12 different places in Britain. I never had a community that I lived with. And what I do now is a reflection of that.
Because of my work, we moved around quite a lot. I don't say that the family was gypsies, but Tim certainly was brought up in a family that were used to living in different parts of the country.
He was always very comfortable and confident with people, and I think that was one of his great gifts, that he could communicate at whatever level, whether it was children or adults, and in whatever condition.
As an undergraduate at Oxford, Tim had a very wide and inquiring mind and was intensely interested in everything that took his attention. He finished his degree and he went to India. After a year, we couldn't get him back. I had 3 faxes in over 2 years from him from odd places. He was a person who seldom became a tourist. His mind and the interest led him really to immerse himself. That sort of commonplace impulse was at the foundation of really the rest of his life.
It kind of occurred to me that we were living in an image-based world, and that would be kind of a really interesting way to communicate with people. Eventually a friend of mine said, you know, if you really want to do this properly, you should go back to college. And there was a course in Cardiff that he pointed out, and it was about photojournalism. And he said, well, that's telling stories with pictures. And I thought, that's kind of what I want to do.
Well, as I remember Tim in '96, he was a big, rangy fellow, tall, thin, very affable, And he had a nice laugh and a relaxed manner about him, but he was also obviously very bright, and he was also warm. And my whole belief in photography is that it's about engaging with people. And Tim engaged with people with knobs on.
I think he was willing to put himself in difficult situations. He did a piece about a hospital, and as it turned out, he'd spent sort of 24 hours at A&E, which most of us wouldn't, dream of doing at the time. It's a lot of dedication to spend 24 hours in that situation.
Come like a blood clot, heart attack, lick you and you can't turn up. Spread out, spread out.
It was a pointer to the sort of way he worked and what he did later on.
Tim embraced, and he was the only student that year who really got into it. He embraced multimedia. I think of him as probably my first genuinely modern student. He saw right from the word go that the future wasn't going to be just about print. The future is about learning to work across many different platforms for many different audiences in many different ways. It's about having a subject matter that you've immersed yourself in completely. And he had a way of being able to do that that was remarkable, and not many people have been able to do that.
Photography liberated me from the workplace. It made me free. It would allow me to express myself. It channeled me. It made me free from a kind of destructive tendency that I guess I had inside myself, so I could channel my energy somewhere. It made me free to move. I need to move, that's just how I am.
It's okay? Yeah. Yeah, you can carry on, no problem.
I love working with people. I think that I can move into diverse situations as a stranger fairly easily. I spent the last many years doing that.
How to say very good in Tamil?
Alam.
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 Is good.
Yeah.
What? Very good?
Yeah, very good. Alam.
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 Okay, you're English? Alam.
Alam, yeah. Yeah.
I know about 5 words of about 30 languages.
Yes.
Alam.
I find that instead of the interaction ruining the dynamic of the images, it actually breaks through that ice straight away, and it allows you just to get on and start working. I mean, it's really obvious I'm there. I'm a big white guy, I'm in your country, and for me to pretend otherwise is just plain stupid.
It's nice to see. Yeah.
Preston Road.
How do I say goodbye? Or what? But not a goodbye. I'll see you again.
Yeah, foi do aram, Tamil. Foi do aram.
Foi do arum. Foi do arum. Foi do arum.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna walk off.
Yeah.
I can see. So foi do arum. And Nandri. The idea of becoming a journalist and illustrating my own ideas came, about in about 99. And that was when I found out about a group of footballers from Liberia coming to the UK on a football tour. And they were ex-combatants that had fought in the war in Liberia. Here they were from one of the poorest countries in the world visiting one of the richest. And I thought that was a really interesting story about worlds colliding. And they said, you know what, we're looking for somebody to go to Liberia. Will you go for us? And that's how it all began.
When I went to Liberia, it just blew me away. I'd never experienced a country like that before in my life. And it was 2 years after the end of the Civil War, 2 years into the reign of Charles Taylor, and I went to photograph football as one of the more positive things that was going on in Liberia at the time. Healing Sport was the first coherent project that I made as a photographer. I made it under the idea of Trojan horses. The idea was, can we talk about things that people are reluctant to talk about by disguising them as in other vehicles? And so basically Healing Sport was about war, but it was disguised as sport. After working in Liberia, I went to Sierra Leone in '99. A rebel army, the Revolutionary United Front, the RUF, had invaded Freetown.
And I went with a surgeon into the interior, and we came across people that had been blinded by the rebels. So I made a series of portraits of them.
Many of the children lost their parents. We have to take care of them.
Are you listening to me? Hello?
There was one girl, Safi, who had a rebel beat up her father and killed him and raped the mother. And then when she started crying, they melted this plastic and dropped the thing in her eyes, and that made her to be blind.
Tim's work at the Milton Margai School for the Blind was really pivotal to what happened next in his career. He became really invested in those children's lives.
A lot of photographers, I think, are presenting their work as if it's like, you know, you have to see this, the world needs to see this kind of, you know, moral outrage. And for me, you know, moral outrage motivates me, but I don't see it as a useful tool to get people to engage with the world. I think that we need to build bridges to people.
He didn't give a Western audience the images that they expected to see, the worst stereotypes of what violence in West Africa means. What he came back with was a really in-depth personal profile, not just of the horror that they'd been through, but of the hope that they had of where they were going. What Tim saw in the blind school were the effects of war. He wanted to understand how it would be caused in the first place. And I think that what he went on to do in West Africa, when he came to Liberia with me, when he stepped into the middle of that war, was to see very clearly who was perpetrating these acts of violence and why. I first met Tim because he rang me up out of the blue and said, "Hi, you don't know me. My name's Tim Hetherington. I'd really like to come to Liberia with you and take photographs of the rebels." And I was kind of taken aback. The idea of just suddenly taking Tim along and, you know, throwing that exclusive out the window, it's like, yeah, you know, sure, come along. It's like never going to happen, right? It was just one of those meetings where things just clicked, and, you know, he's the same height as me. We had similar education. He came along to shoot video for the film that we're making, but part of the deal was that he'll be able to shoot entirely his own portfolio of photographs.
Liberian government officials are not enemy. Killer is the only enemy. Boom! Boom! Manuwe, no make a walale. Manu gatajinale. Amanu gatajinale.
In a way, I felt sort of quite guilty, you know. I mean, Tim had never been in combat. He'd never been on a front line in war like this before. I mean, he was totally unfazed, but then he didn't really know what was about to happen next.
So where are you going? For diamonds?
I'm going now in Moravia and hit it and kept on dressing like a woman.
You're not going to the Bahamas for holiday?
No.
No, definitely Monrovia?
Yes.
Good.
I said, wow, what a string guy. What is handsome young man, you know, doing in a lion den?
Wow. You can see her?
Yeah.
It's all of us. So you think he's a good driver or rubbish?
No, he's a good driver. How can this man leave a family, everybody, you know, just to sacrifice to come and just do a piece of job? He wanted to be at the front, seeing the action, seeing everything. And before you do that, you really have to be brave, because it was not easy. Everybody was for yourself. If they capture you, you are on your own.
The rebels from the north, the Lord, who Tim was traveling with, they were largely ethnic Mandingo, and they had felt really cast aside by Taylor's regime. And so to join up with the rebels would be to throw your lot in with a bunch of young men, teenagers at best, and you're going to walk through some of the most treacherous jungle conditions that you can find anywhere, toward a regime that's one of the most feared regimes in West Africa. Charles Taylor's regime was considered the source of instability for Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast.
The nature of the fighting in Liberia, it wasn't just two armies facing each other off. It was two groups of young men absolutely enamoured with the theatrics of war. They used the drama to instill fear, but they also used it to give themselves courage. And the effect that that has on you is terrifying.
It's kind of strange doing a job where you're actually going out and then you're looking for fighting.
I remember in Liberia going down a road and it was like there's fucking heavy fighting up there, man. There's shelling and bombing. And I'm like, we're walking that way. Like it's like 2 kilometers up there and we're walking there. It'd be fucking insane.
Down, 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 down.
You really kind of think, man, you wanted this and now it's just gone too far. Like you've really fucked it now. You're gonna end up dead, and you know you've let everybody down, and you've just for what? For a picture, you know?
Oh, that big horse. Let's go. Okay, let's go.
And that's very frightening. That's the ultimate loss of control.
Tim was just in it. There comes a point where that just is your reality. It stops becoming weird and different. It's just what you're living and breathing at that moment.
You really don't know how you're going to react in a combat zone. And luckily, I kind of reacted okay when I first happened to me. And I kind of keep my head together. And I just think I have the ability to like, okay, I gotta do this fucking shit, I hate this shit, okay, click that side of the brain off. I can just do that.
And I looked at Tim and I thought, you know, he's cool. And I'd spent so long working there alone, and suddenly I was there with someone who really had his shit together, who really knew what he was doing, who was filming great stuff, taking amazing pictures. And to get both video and stills, but really good, you know, that's hard. That's hard.
Not being so much interested in action or traditional war photography, what I've tried to do in the work was bring a quieter kind of reflection to images of conflict. And I've done that by using a medium format Rolleiflex. It's a square-based format which is suited to portraiture.
The great thing about using those kinds of camera in war, apart from the fact that no one else was, the fact that you had to slow down and look for the moment. It's almost like he saw a different layer visually to the conflict.
It changes the dynamic of my relationship to people. I look down into the camera at them. I'm very tall. If I put a camera to my face, it's like an object. In a war zone, it's like I stand out. I'm very threatening. So I change the way that I work. It also means that I can talk to people whilst I photograph them. So you hear some photographers that will say that they never talk to people, that it's this objectivity thing. You know what? I gotta talk to people.
Tim's work was not about war. Tim's work was about human nature. There's this picture of a fighter about to head off to the battle, and you recognize immediately exactly for what it is. This moment of saying goodbye. It's this moment that speaks such a greater truth about what war does to people than seeing the action.
I was documenting different things at different times, but one consistent thing that I saw as I traveled around the country during the war was this war graffiti that had been painted by armed factions in houses that they'd taken over. And I started to document this.
The names of people became very important. Being able to trace where certain fighters were. Taylor perfected a system of inversion in Liberia, where kids became killers, where women were carrying ammunition. And so the graffiti, it sort of, for me, has all of that loaded into it. It was like these psychic scars of the war. I think they have far more power for me than some of the more gory images that were taken by press photographers.
Well, we just come in from, we walked yesterday about, how far?
About 35 miles.
About 35 miles. Nothing to eat. We slept at Po River Bridge, about 10 of us in a fucking sentry post. And then we've just endured fucking, I don't know, 5-10 kilometres of firefights to make it here to the beer factory. I'm pretty fucked.
Did you just have a refreshing drink?
I did. It's the beer factories over there.
And how good was that refreshing
That was
drink?
fucking awesome. I can't wait for my first beer in the Member Point Hotel.
We got to the beer factory, which the rebels had turned into their sort of headquarters. They'd also converted the interior into a makeshift clinic. And after about an hour or so, Iron Jacket, Deputy Chief of Staff, he decided that this doctor, paramedic from Monrovia, was a government spy.
Don't kill him. He's a medic.
I turned round and could see this happening. And I'd already filmed several executions in Liberia, and I thought, it's going to be another execution. So I turned around and got it in a wide shot. Next moment, Tim comes in. He grabs the gun hand of Iron Jacket and starts negotiating for the guy's life. And just says, look, you know, this is the only doctor you've got. And really just put himself directly in the path of this. They led the guy off, they didn't shoot him, and very shortly he was back treating wounded at the hospital again. Tim had this ability to just do very surprising things. You know, he didn't see a division between being a photographer or a videographer or a journalist or a humanitarian or a participant. He was just Tim. And that it's very hard to find that.
Tim was almost immeasurably affected by what he had seen, the horrors that had been perpetrated. It was something that sort of sat on his shoulder a bit, really, and it reinforced his attitude to the world. I remember him once saying to me, you know, you're very rich. And I said, well, with what definition? He said, you are very rich because you are able to control and determine your own life and avoid the absolute devastation that I have seen overwhelm people. He was very forceful about it. He said, no, you must understand. We are all very privileged.
You know, working at war, myself, Tim, other journalists, developed mechanisms to cope. A lot of the time, I think Tim looked for refuge in his work. Striving always to be the best and to get it right and to be different. I think that brought him a lot of comfort, and it helped him to assimilate what he saw at war.
There were lots of atrocities committed during the war in Liberia. I witnessed all sorts of different things. But more importantly, what I witnessed were the power relationships that happen between the guys on the ground and the people directing them. I was interested in young men and power, young men and violence. I think the war is part of the hardwiring of young men. They're really ultimately used as tools for a political process because of genetics and chemistry. The interesting thing that I've recently come to understand is that the role of witnessing carries a kind of strong responsibility. This is the only photograph that exists of the mortaring of Monrovia that killed over 1,000 people. The leader of these rebels denied that his men had mortared the city, and everybody said, no, we've seen the picture, we've seen the picture. Suddenly you realize that you're part and parcel of this important historic process of coming to terms with what happened. I decided at the end of the war to stay on in Liberia. It seemed that although the war had finished, that my job was not finished. I felt that what Liberia needed was for people to really take part in the society. And I lived and worked in West Africa for 8 years. 3 or 4 of those in Liberia.
It shows Tim's commitment. He went in and he stayed in. And he worked as a filmmaker and as a photographer, as a teacher, as a mentor, as an investigator, and as a humanitarian.
Okay.
I have no desire to be a kind of war firefighter flying from war zone to war zone. I have no, really, I don't really care about photography. I have no interest in photography per se. I'm interested in reaching people with ideas and engaging them with views of the world.
Me, Tim. You? Huh? Gemma. Yeah. So, Tim?
All right. Jesus Christ, man, it was
What just happened?
Oh, we were fucking walking down the hill. And I think we were their targets. It just was right, very close over our head, incoming. Like a kind of sniper or something. It was like, 5 rounds or so.
I had this idea of following a platoon for an entire deployment in Afghanistan. And I realized I needed to work with a photographer who was really comfortable shooting video as well. I needed someone who was in shape, who could carry a lot of gear, and who had been in a lot of combat. Basically, I needed someone like Tim, and then I met Tim.
In my work as a photographer or filmmaker, I always look to be as close to the subject as possible. You're always looking for those moments when the machine breaks down, where there's cracks in it. And I think what happened to us in terms of being given access into this remote valley in Afghanistan was that people kind of forgot about us. And I think it was that persistence of going back and back that gave us such unique access.
Hey guys, how you doing? Perfect day for a stroll.
When Tim and I got into the Korangal Valley, the things that soldiers evaluate are you going to cause a problem Are you going to freak out during combat and need to be taken care of? And finally, are you going to be sort of nasty and political about all this? And Tim and I were clearly not doing that.
All right, listen up. Today we're going to conduct a movement of contact in the village of Obenau. All right, we got 11 U.S. personnel, 5 A&A, 1 Terp, and Sebastian and Tim. Does anyone have any questions?
I think what was interesting was working with one platoon of soldiers in this valley in Afghanistan. In some ways, I could have been anywhere. You know, it could have been any war. I was looking at the experience of the American soldiers. I wasn't necessarily trying to say anything about the truth of Afghanistan or the truth of the political realities on the ground.
It was a very different kind of project for Tim to take on, to spend all of this time with American soldiers, because Tim's instincts would have been much more to go spend time with Afghan civilians. But what comes true is that war is difficult for everybody.
So there is no any bad guys, any fucking Taliban, so everything is okay. Security is tight in this valley, everything is good. So,
all right.
Yeah.
If there was anything suspicious going on, would he be willing to tell us? Come to OP or Strepo at any time to let us know?
Yeah, all right. So I can let you come out.
The world was very much focused on Iraq, and I thought that we would be walking around the mountains, we would be drinking cups of tea with elders, we'd occasionally get shot at, and it would be pretty uneventful. But it was completely the opposite.
It's right over the fucking ridge, man.
I was completely surprised by the amount of fighting that was going on. These guys were in a lot of combat.
People really hadn't raised their heads up to what was happening in Afghanistan.
Oh shit! Yep. You good? Nice, man. I'm good. He's right there, right? Yeah, he's right fucking there. Hey, he's still in there. Shit, man.
During that time, what was interesting was that, not to belittle the fighting, but I got kind of tired of it.
For me, whilst there is a certain amount of adrenaline to do with combat and filming that, I mean, for me, the really important stories of being close to these men. That's what it's about. That's what really I'm there for.
Oh, okay. Oh. Aaron's beauty parlor.
Yeah. Really?
So, here we are in the, we come to the barber shop in the Corongal. That's the combat for the day.
What's about to happen, Tim?
I'm going to let this lunatic at me with a pair of clippers. I don't know why, but I mean, take one look at him. Would you trust this man?
What's the name of this particular haircut?
It's called
high and tight.
But for English purposes, it'll be called the High and Mighty.
Yeah. This is what they do to you when you first join the military.
Oh no! You want to see what they do?
Yeah.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen.
How's it look? Pretty sexy, huh?
I'm slipping into the shade here.
My grandpa, he'll sit there and he'd tell stories about like World War II and shit like that. He doesn't tell stories about the war. He tells stories about the whorehouses in different countries. I was in Calcutta, India. Jesus Christ, the craziest fucking broads there you never fucking met. They do things that just blow your mind.
So while you're in Amsterdam, Tim, you gonna go see the red light district?
Yeah. It depends if my girlfriend comes with me or not.
Just fucked up, dude.
The lure of a place like Restrepo inhabits a much more profound place in young men than just, oh, I need some adrenaline. Tim called it the Man Eden. It was just sort of, for the young male psyche, this easy place to be.
Matt, what are we doing?
Well, we found a new hole to dig in. You'd think after so many months of being here, we'd be fucking done with this shit, but we're not, so.
Filling sandbags on the side of a mountain, waiting to get shot at, while making fun of each other and eating bad food and telling bad jokes. It was a great place to be if you're a man. There was no social norms. I think that it doesn't happen a lot in our society. Out there, it didn't matter how you were dressed, it didn't matter how you looked, how much money you made, it didn't matter how hot your girlfriend was. If you weren't filling sandbags, you were fucking wrong.
One of the pictures that I really like is of what I call my kind of man-Eden picture. It really isn't like a kind of war photograph. It's a very pastoral scene to it. It kind of brings up ideas of medieval paintings and kind of indicated that the work was going in another direction. As I stayed on, then I started to make these more kind of nuanced pictures about men and war and these kind of the relationships, the boredom.
It's like a wild animal, guys.
Dude. Ow! They're just family. They're the best guys that you could ever be with. You know, even the guys you don't like, you love them. You know, even the guys that you fight with, you argue with, you still die for them. So how much can you hate them? Talk about dudes that, you know, work together and you think 13 months you start to fall apart. But the truth is it's only brought us closer.
Come on, Tim. These burgers.
Operation.
Hey, Sebastian, grab these 2 ammo cans, bring them down.
Tim had been in a lot of combat in Liberia, and I think one of the things he was looking for after that experience wasn't the truth about combat as a form of conflict, but the truth about combat as a form of bonding. And what he saw with his camera in this environment of killing and fear and hardness was connection.
My grandfather was a professional soldier. He fought right through the Burma campaign. He lost all of his friends. And I said to him, you know, do you regret any of this? Would you change any of it? And he explained it to me like this. He said, war is the only opportunity that men have in society to love each other unconditionally. And it's understanding the depth of emotion at war that Tim was fascinated with.
All right. You don't want me to die, right?
Cool. We got this.
Soldier. You know what, man? We were down in the Aliabad Cemetery, and a round hit me right in the head. Knocked the shit out of me. Knocked me out for a minute. I heard somebody say, we got a WIA. Steiner's been shot in the head. Then I heard somebody say, he's fucked up. That's when I came to and told him I wasn't. Just flashing blue spots in your eyes. It's pretty good to be alive. Good day. Come here, man. Yeah, that ain't very nice to look at right there. You know, that almost went through, you know. I'd be floating around with a halo and some wings. Just drinking beers with the Almighty.
High as giraffe ass.
You're going to hell. We're all going to hell. We commit premeditated murder on a daily basis. I mean, come on, man.
It's not murder. Murder? It's war. War. It's a difference.
War is very confusing to soldiers. It's so terrible when it's happening, and then you miss it so terribly when it's over. The experience of being part of a group like that.
Restrepo is a distillation of what Sebastian and I have really come to understand at Young Men in War. The war machine isn't just technology and bombs and missiles and systems and this kind of CNN TV-mediated world. The war machine is put a group of men together in extreme circumstances and get them to bond together, and they will kill and be killed for each other. At the end of the day, you realize they were all young men just put together on the side of this mountain, and all they were trying to do is survive and look after each other, so they all got back home alive. That was it, really. Nothing to do with war, nothing to do with the politics.
One day, it was this incredibly hot, boring day, and everyone's asleep, except the guys on guard duty. I mean, this is the ultimate situation where nothing's going on. You can just switch your brain off because there's no work to do as a journalist. And I see Tim scuttling around with his camera, and he's photographing the soldiers who are asleep. I was like, Tim, man, what are you doing? And he said, don't you get it? Of course I didn't. I never did, often with Tim. Don't you get it? And he said, this is what the American public never gets to see because any nation is self-selecting in the images it presents. And we want to see our soldiers as strong. We don't want to know that they're also these vulnerable boys.
There's something about those sleeping soldiers' pictures that get at the sense of these are just kids, you know? And see them stripped down and asleep in wartime conveys this sense of sending off young men to die.
I returned to the Korangal Valley to go on an offensive combat operation, and during this time we saw some very close fighting where actually the American lines were overrun.
Suppression on 2251. The enemy's pushed up on the high ground.
I was with a machine gun crew that managed to hold off one area. And then we ran up to a point where we thought the scouts were under attack.
Damn, man! It's not your fault, dude.
Sergeant, what happened?
Our guys just got overrun and we lost one, got 2 wounded right now. We're about to try and get them air medevacs out of here. I don't know what else to say.
What for me was the real tragedy was seeing a young man who sees his best friend get killed. Seeing that young men go through that was really upsetting. I mean, I knew it was going to happen because I'd been in a war before. I know what it's like to see somebody die in front of you. But for them to see that, and then that's something you know that they will forever live with.
What we're going to do, we're going to take those 2 wounded in action down there. I want you getting them back to fucking LZ Eagles. All right, you know where that's at? Roger. Where we fucking have to drop over there.
At one point during the ambush I was filming, and one of the colleagues of Sergeant Rugal who'd been killed, he came up to me and started swearing at me and told me to stop filming.
Over that way. What's up? It's over that way where we got the body bags. They got his weapon, nods, and fucking the 240. The bad guys? Got a good picture? We're gonna fucking smash that camera off your fucking face. Get the fuck out of here. All right, hey, let's fucking go.
But later on he came up to me and he said, look, I'm really sorry for shouting at you. You know, I kind of understand that you got a job to do. And but it was really strange to kind of film people, you know, who I got close to in such a kind of moment of trauma. And I remember at one point the Afghan army tried to drag away Larry's body, and one of his friends started shouting at them like, "You can't drag off his body. I'm not seeing them. You drag his body off like that." And you know, those were very traumatic events for me, and, you know, you try to kind of digest them, but it takes time to work over them.
It's not that traumatic, almost getting killed, being in danger. It really isn't. Makes you jumpy for a while. But I wouldn't call it deep trauma. Deep trauma comes from the pain of others. And the sense of being part of the thing that's hurting people. And as a journalist, you are part of the machine that's hurting people. You're in a war, shooting images of people who are dead or dying or wounded or grieving. You're part of it. And it leaves you, in some ways, quite ashamed.
I just finished a 20-minute documentary short called Diary. It's the first time where I've located myself in my work. It's an artistic rendering of what it feels like to do my job. It's kind of very disconcerting sometimes to feel you've lost the needle of what is graphic, what is, you know, what is too far. So the film is this stream of consciousness where you flip between my personal life and my work life, and so you kind of understand that this multiplicity of this kind of different realities that I flip between.
We'll find a place for us playing at a reasonable time.
He has all of these scenes being back in his home life where he's talking to people, talking to his girlfriend, walking around in a field, but you can see that his mind is actually in another place. After a while, war becomes normality. And the hard part isn't about going to war, it's about coming back home.
I mean, this is England. Bloody awesome.
I think in the end he drove himself into a welter of indecision. I remember he once said to Judith and me, he was bemoaning the fact that he wasn't married and really couldn't understand why not. And when we said, well, when you're not here, you're in Liberia, or you're in the Korangal Valley, or you're in somewhere equally dangerous, and you come home and you are by degrees damaged or undamaged, and then you're here for a month at most, and then you're back somewhere else again for another 3 months. I mean, why are you surprised that you're not married?
One of his deepest fears, I think, was that he didn't want to be alone. Nobody wants to be alone. He wanted to have a family. He was trying to establish some kind of finality with violence, with combat, so that he could then move on to the complicated challenge of a really deep, committed relationship with a woman.
It's the Queen of Somalia.
The president.
It's the President of Somalia.
The president of Somalia.
Are we on is this a official state visit?
Yes.
Yeah? How did you find America?
It is nice. I knew from the first day that I met Tim that I was in love with him. You know, I couldn't recognize it right away, but I knew it, and I think he knew it as well. Walking around with him was almost like walking around with a set of, 10 eyes. He was always so inspired. You know, I think we could go to McDonald's and he'd probably find some kind of creative inspiration there. It was never ending. And when I met Tim, he told me he was done with war. I don't know at the time if I believed him, knowing, slowly knowing his body of work, but he was so clear, I'm done with war. He was ready to almost start a new chapter in New York. But whether he was done or not, I supported him.
I don't know if I want to stay covering conflict anymore. It's a very destructive thing to carry on beyond a certain age, not least because if you look at the ages by which conflict photographers get hurt, it's usually as they get older, because you're inured to the risks more. You know, I know when a story's good, and I know where a story's good, and where that is usually in the most dangerous area, and I won't do any of the other stuff. I'll just go straight to where I think it should be. I don't know. You got me at a low point. I'll have a drink later. Cheer up.
I think Tim came out of Afghanistan and out of our close calls out there very much with the sense that it was time to stop the combat reporting. And he couldn't quite get himself to do it. He was on a cycle that, eventually, I mean, weirdly, ironically, landed us at the Oscars.
This is our first time doing all this. We're first-time filmmakers. It's all a surprise for us. We're absolutely delighted and honored. The most important thing for us is that the film is played wide across America, that people have responded to it. Our
Oscar experience was quite surreal. I think most of the time we were there, we couldn't believe that we were there.
I should. I'm not wearing my body armor today, but I think I should be. Look, judging by the crowds and the amount of press here.
I think it was very intoxicating to him and kind of alarming.
It's been very close.
And we're working journalists, right? So while this is going on, the Arab world's in flames.
By the time Libya came, Tim felt the need to get close to the stories, to get close to the current events. The world was changing, and we were on a red carpet so far removed from, reality. All of his colleagues were there, and he was in a tuxedo in Los Angeles. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah. He wanted a project, but I also think he wanted to understand something. This sort of self-referential idea about war, where soldiers in war see themselves in ways that are informed by images of other soldiers in war. And there's a conscious cycle of imitation going on. He just started to realize there was a feedback loop.
The theatre of war in Liberia, the theatre of war in Libya, opposite ends of Tim's career, were fundamentally connected by one really important question that Tim was trying to answer, which is, how do young men see themselves at war and why?
When he told me that he was going to Libya, I was incredibly apprehensive. And I said to him, I have a very bad feeling about it. I just have a bad feeling about the whole thing. It's a dangerous sort of situation in a dangerous part of the world at a dangerous time. And he said, well, I've been in danger before. And I said, yes, I know. But you're going to be on your own in Misrata.
It was difficult to read the news about Libya, and all the while knowing that Tim was there. However, we were in such constant contact, and we'd created this vision and narrative for the direction we were going into, that death was not a part of, the picture, despite the work.
And we had a very explicit conversation about how dangerous Libya was, where I said, come on, Tim, you can do this work without getting up to the front lines, Don't take the risk. This is not your story right now. But somehow there's the other journalists going, and there's 3 other people going, and you sort of forget what your immediate mission is, and you want to go closer and closer to where the action is.
In a war, you lose a lot of things. One of the things that you lose can be the original connection that took you there. I felt that they were not, paying the proper attention and the proper respect to everything that was happening around. They were actually trying to get in front of the rebels.
I think I didn't realize the danger where we were, Tim, I think he realized, because he was like looking at everything like with a face like you could tell like he was aware of what was going on, really. Two rebels that were with us, suddenly one of them like fell, and it was like he was shot in the head, and we took him out. And then at that point we look at each other, all of us, I felt real danger to be there. And I think all of us, because we all decided to leave that place.
And there was a side street, and we all kind of stopped at it, and it was this really eerie scene of this open truck filled with Gaddafi soldier uniforms, and they were all over the ground, and there was a helmet, a green helmet with a bullet hole right through the top of it. Tim took a photo of it. And I liked that spot too because it was behind a corner, and I didn't like being on Tripoli Street. And then there was just this huge blast.
There was a lot of dust. I saw 7-10 bodies lying at the same place, and I thought at that moment, oh my God, they were there.
I thought Tim was okay. He was holding his leg, but he was shouting. But Chris wasn't moving, wasn't speaking.
I saw a pickup car with 2 guys and say, please, come. And the 2 helped me to put their bodies into the back of the pickup, Chris and Tim. Tim was still conscious, but getting dizzy, losing consciousness. So I took his hand just to make him awake and to say, Tim, come on, don't fall asleep. We are getting to the hospital. Whenever I talked to him, he was like that, like when you wake up someone who is sleeping and then falling asleep again. But each time he was more like going away. And at one point he wouldn't wake up again.
Something very unusual happened to me on that day.
there were some beautiful flowers outside the shop, and I chose some red roses, got back to the car, and I lifted the boot to put the red roses in, and I don't know, I just felt something incredibly, I just felt I didn't want to take the red roses home. And it's something I've never ever done in my life before. I took the red roses back, and I went and chose 12 white roses and took them home. And when I got home, they were in my arms when I found out that through the Home Office that Tim had died, and I just dropped them on the floor.
The deaths of two outstanding photojournalists, Tim Hetherington and Chris Hondros, have caused enormous sadness, not only among friends and family, but also within the entire community of journalists. Hetherington, aged 40, was a consummate professional who took the job of war reporting as seriously as anyone in the history of this business.
No, I never thought that Tim was going to be killed. It sounds naive to say that now.
This is my mum and dad with my book. What are you looking at, Mum?
People don't assume that, family members or people close to them are going to be killed, even though they do have a very, dangerous occupation.
Oh, I'm crying.
No, it's good. It's nice. It's very emotional.
Yeah, good. It's meant to be emotional.
It was... Yeah, it was completely devastating.
I went to Sebastian's house, and that's where I got the news, and I didn't believe it at first. I didn't believe it. It was so worth it because we didn't compromise in our relationship. So why would we compromise our passion and our work and aspects of our lives that made us feel fully alive and fully realized human beings? I wouldn't compromise. So I don't think he should.
I get an email from a Vietnam vet that we had both met in Texas. And he said, "I'm so sorry about your friend Tim." He said, "You guys, with your movie and your books, like, you really came close to understanding war."
We're going to war. We're going to war.
He said, "I'm worried this is going to sound callous, but you didn't get all the way. The core reality of war isn't that you might get killed out there. That's obvious. The core truth about war is that you're guaranteed to lose your brothers. And now you've lost a brother, and you know everything you need to know about it." And it wasn't callous what he said. It was, the truth can't be callous. It's the truth. And finally, I got it.
Oh, Johnny boy.